Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Melissa Stevens. I'll be your MC to help move the agenda along. First of all, I am a single mother from Lewiston, and I know what it's like to work low-wage jobs and not be able to make ends meet. I worked as a massage therapist, but even with my professional training, I was making $8 an hour in the field as a waged worker. This is just 50 cents more than Maine's minimum wage. On $8 an hour, it was impossible to afford basic necessities for my family. Things like childcare, transportation, a roof over our heads, heating oil in the winter. While I was working full-time, I still needed to rely on food stamps to be able to feed my family. I joined the minimum wage campaign last fall, and I personally collected hundreds of signatures to make sure that this initiative is on the ballot this year. I am beyond thrilled to be here today with so many community leaders from all walks of life as we submit far more than enough signatures to place this referendum on the ballot. If successful in November, this referendum will increase Maine's minimum wage to $9 an hour in 2017 and then $1 a year until it reaches $12 in 2020. The sub-minimum wage for tipped workers will also be gradually increased until it reaches the full minimum wage in 2024. We're going to hear from a series of Mainers from across the state as they share the impacts of this initiative on their lives and why they dedicated so much of their personal time to realize the goal of collecting 90,000 signatures, and then we're going to deliver these signatures to the Secretary of State.
Hello, my name is Katie Logan. I'm from Auburn. I work at a convenience store. A few years ago, I was a single mom struggling to make ends meet, making just over minimum wage at $8 an hour, and trying to support myself and my 6-year-old after my marriage had failed. My son and I were on food stamps and Maine Care, even though I was working full-time. I had a car payment for a car that wasn't even safe, but was my only way to get to work. It was impossible to keep up with my bills. At one point, after being evicted, I was living in a homeless shelter while working full-time to save enough to get another apartment. No matter how hard I tried to find out appropriate housing, there was no way I could afford $900 to $1,000 a month for rent. I was still working a low-wage job today, and it's really tough to get by. I know that I am not the only one who has struggled to support my family on poverty wages. It just isn't right that there are people like me all over the state who are working hard every day but can't get ahead. I collected hundreds of signatures over the summer and the fall because I really want to see everyone in Maine with a fair wage. Thank you.
Hello, hello. My name is Brandy M. Staples, and I am from Phippsburg, Maine. When I was 26 years old, I was diagnosed with a very rare stage of breast cancer. And I had to leave my workforce for a year and a half in order to get myself well again and heal from this horrible disease. Since then, trying to get back into the workforce and trying to go back to school, it's been really hard trying to find a dependable, livable wage work and make ends meet, especially now that I have huge amounts of student loan debts and especially medical debts. I currently work 2 part-time jobs, which are close to minimum wage, plus I need to help my parents with their business. And with all these 3 jobs combined, I still don't make enough to get by. And it would be nice to have only one job that has full-time benefits and that would allow me to enjoy my life and get back to hopefully a good financial future. This is why I went out there and I collected 626 signatures. So that way I and others like me in my situation can get back on our feet. Thank you. Namaste.
Hello, my name is Adam Lee. I'm chairman of Lee Auto Malls. 100 years ago, Henry Ford doubled the wages of his factory workers. He did it to reduce turnover, and he wanted to make sure his own employees could afford to buy a car. Profits at Ford doubled over a short period. When working Mainers make a decent living, they spend the extra money in our communities. It's good for the whole economy, including my business. In the last year and a half, Lee Auto Malls has raised our starting wage from $9 to $10 an hour, and 6 months ago we raised it again to $11 an hour. It's good for our employees, it's good for our company, and most importantly, it's the right thing to do. Maine needs fair wages for everyone. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Dick Bissell. My wife and I worked and retired in Bangor. I no longer work, but this is still an issue that affects me. Seeing Bangor thrive, more businesses coming in, and all the young people in my family have a place to grow and prosper is a legacy that I want to hand to them, in the same way my father's generation handed it to us. Raising the minimum wage is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for our workers, our communities, and our economy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia Legler. I am 24 and living in Portland, Maine with $20,000 of student loan debt. To pay it off, make my rent and bills, and put food on my table, I work 2 jobs. One of these jobs is waiting tables, which means I live off of tips, as I'm only paid $3.75 an hour from my employer. As anyone who has lived off of tips knows, this kind of income is highly unreliable, fluctuating with the weather, the season, and the whims of your clientele. As a young woman, it also makes me subject to sexual harassment from my customers. It's not a subject that's often talked about, but when someone is essentially paying your bills through their tips, it makes it that much harder to stand up for yourself and ask them to leave when they make unwanted sexual advances as you take their order. If I made, at the very least, minimum wage from my employer, I would have more protection from mistreatment from customers, and I would be able to plan and budget with an income that is more consistent. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is April Thibodeau, and I live on Westport Island. I've waitressed off and on my whole life, and it seemed like a way to make a lot of money in less time than regular entry-level jobs. Yet, overall, I never ended up making that much in a year. Slow days, off seasons, bad tippers would all add up to a low overall income. In addition to the variability, there are issues of harassment and of feeling demeaned, and also of conflict between other restaurant staff over tips and tip sharing. Many lending institutions don't consider tip income reliable enough for wait staff to get loans. Not paying tipped workers a fair minimum wage is a shadowy, unfair system. It works well for nobody but restaurant owners. I know we can do better for all Mainers, and we're going to do it this November.
My name is Linnea Hawkins, and I live in Auburn. I'm a single mom, and I've worked minimum wage jobs most of my life, and I too know what it's like to struggle to support a family on low wages. When I've worked low-wage jobs, most weeks I had to supplement my income by donating plasma in order to be able to afford my bills and food. Recently, I started an apprenticeship with the local IBEW to become an electrician, and as an apprentice, I've made $13.42 an hour. But that work isn't consistent yet. I just got laid off, and now I'm back to trying to cobble together a couple of part-time jobs to try and support my family. It's impossible to keep a roof over our heads, pay our bills, afford food and medical care on minimum wage. $13.42 isn't even a living wage in Maine for a single person, let alone a mother raising a family. I know that with a minimum wage raise, we'll see impacts on higher wages too, moving people like me closer to a living wage. This initiative will be a rising tide that can lift all boats.
Hi. My My name is Adelaide Baramburi Yemani Rakiza. I live in Westbrook. I came to this country after my life was threatened in Burundi for speaking out for military widows and orphans. I've built a new life here for my family, and I am proud to work as a direct support professional for people with disability and mental illnesses. Unfortunately, my work pays poverty wages. When I am working overnight with a client, I make just $7.50 an hour. I have $4 in college, pursuing the American dream, and I work hard every day to try to help pay for their studies. It's incredibly difficult. Fortunately, they are smart and have some scholarships, and we could never afford it. It's not right that such important work, looking after elderly minors and people with disability, is valued so little. Raising the minimum wage is the least we should do to help families like mine. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Esther Pugh. I grew up in East Andover, and I currently live in Portland. I am putting myself through graduate school, trying to take out the smallest amount of new loans possible, pay off my undergraduate loans, pay rent, and have money set aside in case of emergency. If something happened to my car, I'm not sure how I would get to work and to school. I am working as a tipped worker at a restaurant in Portland, and a boost in my base wage would mean I would not have to rely solely on tips in order to support myself. It's hard to stick to a budget and be financially responsible when your wages can fluctuate drastically from one shift to the next. Getting a steady paycheck from my employer, and not just tips from my customers, would be a boost for me and thousands of tipped workers, mostly women, working in restaurants all over Maine. Thank you.
My name is Ellery Keene, and I live in Winslow. I collected signatures for the petition from neighbors and friends because we agree that raising the minimum wage is the right thing to do. Minimum wages have not kept up with the increasing cost of living due to inflation. Retired people like me know what it's like to live on a tight budget. Too many people who are working full-time are living in poverty and can't make ends meet. That's just wrong, and it's time to do something about it by raising the minimum wage. When people have more money in their pockets, they can spend it at local businesses, which is good for us.
Hello, my name is Ben Waxman, and I'm here today with my fiance and business partner, Whitney Reynolds. We are the proud owners of a new company, American Roots, in Portland, Maine. A union company, too, by the way. Starting with my mother, Dory, our family has always shared a long-standing belief that paying our workforce a living wage and carrying that tradition forward was key to our success and what we believe in. We intend to do that with this second generation. We are business owners and members of our community. Our employees are our friends. They are our neighbors, and they are people that we care about. We want them to succeed, and you cannot do that on $7.50 an hour.
The bottom line is, if you work full-time, you deserve to be able to support your family, period. If you can't be successful and pay your employees a fair wage, you shouldn't be in business, period. And please don't tell us that it can't be done. We're making clothing in Portland, Maine, with 100% of our material, down to the thread and the labels, being made in the USA. And we're still able to pay good wages.
The bottom line is that American Roots, we're focused on profits, not greed. We work hard to make a good living for our own family, and our employees do the same. We all deserve the opportunity to pursue the American dream and that starts with a decent wage, period.
Hello, I'm Helen Hansen, a resident of China and a former direct care worker. You may think $10 an hour is a livable wage, but it's not. I never made $20,000 annually at my full-time direct care job. A gallon of milk costs $3.25, a gallon of gas is $1.98, a loaf of bread runs about $2.50, and a jar of peanut butter about $2.79. Now take that from $7.50 an hour, and what's left? Not much. I'm proud to say I collected signatures to get the minimum wage question on the ballot for the 2016 election. I collected signatures in China, and it was great to speak with my friends and neighbors in town about getting this important issue on the ballot. Raising the minimum wage here in Maine is the right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do. Higher wages will help low-wage earners set money aside for retirement. Higher wages will help Mainers keep up with the increasing costs of necessities like food, heating oil, and rent. Higher wages will help low-wage earners support themselves and their families.
Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Hamill, and I'm from Levant. As a mother and as a social worker, I know firsthand what it's like to try to raise a family on low wages, and I know what a difference it makes to have a strong social safety net with jobs that pay a living wage. I am an example of the American dream. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and my daughter will be next. I love my job. It's in a field that helps my community, and I have free time to volunteer for causes I believe in, like this one. Today I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer. It wasn't easy to get to this point. When I was a teenage mother, I relied on important assistance programs to help me save what little money I could to attend college and raise my family. I'm better off today than I was years ago, and I will never lose sight of the fact that there are so many people in our state that are struggling to make ends meet on low wages. A low-wage job alone does not set families up to succeed in these tough times. We can and we should do better. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Heather McIntosh. I am a full-time student and a fine dining server in Portland. So a lot of the time, the opponents of this initiative talk about the tipped wage. They point to servers like me to prove that $3.75 an hour is okay. What they don't talk about is the fact that I've worked in this industry for over 20 years. This has been my career. Also, I am a single mother, like many working for tips. And in order to cope with inconsistent schedules and living entirely off of tips, I have to take out additional student loans to make ends meet. Even when you work in the busiest city and one of the most expensive restaurants, you still never know if you'll make enough to get by. When the only guaranteed wage you get is $3.75 an hour, you are taught that you deserve less, that you are worth less. This initiative, this fight for one fair minimum wage for all Mainers, is our chance to say we are worth more. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing your powerful stories. At this point, we're happy to take any questions from the press. We have our campaign spokesperson, Mike Tipping, on hand. Thank you.